Meet a woman who was trapped in the World Trade Center on 9/11 and lived to tell about it.
Today on Living the Life. 5 years ago, our nation changed forever. I traveled to New York City to find out how people are coping living at Ground Zero. And in the days following the attack, this little church became the hands and feet of Christ. How St. Paul's Chapel stood strong when the world crumbled around it. Plus, she was one of the last people to escape from the Twin Towers. Leslie Haskins' miraculous story of 9/11. That's today.
Thanks for joining us on Living the Life. I don't suppose any of us will ever forget where we were on 9/11. But we're going to meet a woman who was on the 36th floor of the North Tower when the first plane hit her building and rocked her world. She's going to share her amazing story.
And plus, we'll visit a little church just a few feet away from Ground Zero that stood tall when the towers collapsed. But first, Carolyn took a special trip recently to New York City.
Yes, ma'am. 9/11 changed the way we see the world forever. But 5 years later, we went to Ground Zero to hear from people at the heart of where it all started. We've all seen the pictures.
Just barely, got on my seat when this loud explosion goes up.
We've heard the stories of heroes and miraculous rescues.
About the 40th floor, that's when I saw all these firemen and the cops coming up. There were hundreds of them climbing up, and we all said, "God be with you."
And we remember the faces of those who didn't make it. September 11th, 2001. It's been 5 years, and the skyline of New York is forever altered. And while we take this day to remember, we're also asking questions of ourselves like, what have we learned since 9/11? And how have our lives changed?
The people that I know have been a lot more patriotic, and I believe they've been a whole lot more conservative than what they used to be.
What is the biggest change you've seen in people's lives since 9/11?
I just think that ever since 9/11, you just got to look at a picture differently. You can't take stuff for granted anymore. At any moment, you could be gone.
So does that cause you to approach life differently each and every day?
Yes, ma'am. You got to look at it different. You have to look at the picture itself. You can't just look at what's going on in your life. You have to see everything. You can see to me, the picture is just much clearer.
It's also clearer for Henry Lawrence, visiting for the first time from Kentucky.
Well, I think every American ought to come here to see and realize how many people died, innocent people, to let them know what this country is fighting.
Like my husband said, I think that we were not realizing that we were not safe in our own country. It was a big shock, and it brings tears to my eyes now to think of these people who suffered, well, unnecessarily.
Reba, you were 7 years old at the time, and it was hard for you to understand what was happening during 9/11. At age 12, what do you understand now?
What I've seen so far, it was really devastating, and the effect on people was really bad. And I didn't know anything about it at the beginning, but this is my first time in New York, and now I've kind of noticed how it really affected people and how many people died in that building, and how many rescue workers had to go in and save them and still lost their lives. And then they didn't even find all of the bones, and they're still looking.
And still rebuilding, while teaching both young and old here that Project Rebirth at Ground Zero really begins in the heart. 5 years later, it's hard to believe. And I talked to one man who said he felt that he was starting to forget. He was starting to forget the lessons of 9/11, so he felt it was important to come back to Ground Zero and just to see. Everyone should go. Everyone should go to Ground Zero at some point just to remember all of these lessons.
It's amazing, isn't it, on the heels of something so huge that we can't forget so quickly.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's why you see one generation coming behind a generation that's paid an incredible price. And not necessarily
I
understanding.
also think it's how people cope too. Is that that coping mechanism is to try to put it behind us.
Let it be normal again.
But it's never going to be normal again. I mean, I live in New York, so I mean, I think I appreciate New York so much more every day, and the people who live there, and you know, the intestinal fortitude to just keep pushing and keep going. But I don't think New Yorkers ever forget about it. I think maybe people around us might, and I can see why, but in New York, they do not forget.
Never forget.
Well, up next, what began as a normal day at the office turned into a national tragedy. We'll hear a first-person account of what really happened inside the Twin Towers. Stay with us.
Everybody was running back and forth and screaming the building's gonna come down. It was actually seconds before the floor above us was actually collapsing into our floor.
Tomorrow, I've got some gardening tips for planting bulbs, like what to do with those dead-looking ones. And
icy cold beyond any words can describe.
Matthew's trip to hell and back tomorrow. Ladies, stop dreaming about getting away and pick up the phone. It's time for the 2006 Girls Getaway Cruise. We're leaving from Florida for a little fun, sun, and shopping in the Bahamas. Along the way, we'll enjoy great Christian artists and inspirational speakers. And don't forget the food and fellowship. Plus, if you tell them you're a Living the Life viewer, you can get a special payment plan. We've got the whole boat to ourselves, ladies, so bring your friends. Call now and leave your worries behind.
If you find it hard to see when you're trying to tweeze, don't go to extremes to get the light and magnification you need. Just get LumaTweeze, the new precision non-slip tweezers that also gives you the power of light and built-in magnification. So now you can see when you tweeze. The micro bright light makes it easy to see the hair, and the built-in magnifier helps you spot the ones you want to remove. The precision tip tweezers firmly grasp even the finest, shortest hairs and never slip, so you get precise hair removal every time.
I just think it's so important to have beautifully shaped eyebrows, and when I take my glasses off, I can't see a thing. So the LumaTweeze is great. It actually has the light and a magnifier, so you can get all those tiny hairs for a perfect tweeze.
LumaTweeze even helps you spot and remove ingrown hairs and stubble with ease, and the built-in light and magnification is perfect for removing stubborn splinters, and it makes delicate craft work a breeze.
With regular tweezers, sometimes I pinch the skin, you can't exactly see where you're going. With LumaTweeze, I can see perfectly every time, so I get a perfect shape. When you have a perfect shape, you just feel more confident and I don't know, you look better all the time.
You could easily spend $20 for a pair of quality tweezers, but call now and you can get LumaTweeze, the precision non-slip tweezers with built-in light and magnification for just $9.99. As an added bonus, you'll also receive our 5 times lighted magnification mirror. It's a $15 value, but it's yours free. But if you call right now, you'll also get a second LumaTweeze absolutely free. Just pay shipping. That's right, you get 2 LumaTweeze precision non-slip tweezers with built-in light and magnification, plus our lighted magnification mirror, a $60 value for just $9.99. This offer is not available in stores, so call now.
To order your LumaTweeze, call 1-800-913-7931. That's 1-800-913-7931. Don't delay. Call 1-800-913-7931.
It was a Tuesday morning and Leslie Haskin was at her dream job at the World Trade Center. And then the unthinkable happened. She shares an insider's look at 9/11 in her book, Between Heaven and Ground Zero. Leslie, welcome to Living the Life. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
What was life like for you before 9/11?
Well, I was one of only 2 African-American directors for one of the largest insurance companies in the country. I worked my way from receptionist for many years to an executive position. It's all I wanted. It's all I ever dreamed about was career success, and so that's what my life was like. It was the jet setting, the New York scenes, the corporate picnics and the corporate outings, and doing everything that corporate America does. I was one of the power players, and I loved it. That was my life.
And you came from a family of what, 15 kids? I mean, you have 15 siblings in your family, and your dad, he was a pastor, right?
My father was a Baptist minister. My mother was director of the choir. 10 girls, Wow. 11 girls, 10 sisters, 4 brothers, 15 of us all together. So we were raised in a very strict, very religious home. My parents loved God before anything or anyone else.
So were you sort of the aberration to the rule and going off to New York and doing your corporate thing?
The Big Apple?
I was always the exception to the rule. I was my daddy's little girl and the youngest girl. So yeah, I was the one that everybody had to put up with, you know, all the complaining, never obeying the rules, always the independent thinker, the one doing it my own way.
Let's talk about that day. I mean, when it first happened, I mean, obviously you weren't shocked. Did you know what had just gone, what had happened?
No, I went to my office that morning. I had a large corner office on the 36th. Our offices were on the 36th and 37th floor. I went to my office that morning, annoyed that I had to go to work that morning because it was such a beautiful morning. And I remember wanting to take the day off and go to the park or just do anything but be in the office. And I went to the office that morning annoyed that I had to go, annoyed that there was a problem with one of our major insureds and that we had to fix that day or else. So I got there a little bit around the same time I normally do and went over to my assistant's desk. And my reputation was not very good amongst my staff. I didn't have much patience, and so she knew that my coming meant, you know, let's make this short, let's make this brief, and let's get to the point. So I went over to her desk with my attitude and asked her what was going on. And before she could even answer, there was this explosion, this massive explosion. And it's hard to describe except to say it felt like it was all-encompassing. It was on top of us, it was around us, it was underneath us. It was hard to tell where it came from.
What went through your mind right at that moment?
Nothing.
Like shock?
Nothing went through my mind. It was, I think if I had to say something, it had to be, what was that? I mean, it was just awe-struck, everybody. I mean, nobody knew what was going on. It was huge. I mean, at the same time that the explosion happened, the building rocked, and you could feel the building rocking, and it swayed back and forth and never quite righted itself again. So in those first few seconds, my feet went from level ground to actually being on a slant, almost like an amusement park ride. So it's difficult to say what I was thinking at that moment because I think we were all just wondering what's going on here.
Did you want to get out right away, or you were just standing there?
No, I was particularly drawn to what was going on because in those same instances, in that same instant, I could see the debris, the office furniture,
outside the
paper
window
falling outside the window, and it was in those seconds that there were actually recognizable body parts falling from the windows as well, and we could hear them banging against the side of the building and see them falling. So I was drawn into that view, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and it was that moment that I went into shock.
At what point did you say, I have got to get out of here?
I never made a conscious decision to leave. Everybody just followed the crowd. Everybody was running back and forth and screaming, the building's gonna come down. It was actually seconds before the floor above us was actually collapsing into our floor. I saw footage of the plane going into the building, and I saw footage of the building after the plane struck, and I don't recognize that. It doesn't look real to me. It doesn't look like what happened on the inside. It's completely different. From the inside, there's this building with this gaping hole and smoke is coming out, but this building is still standing. From the inside, that building was crumbling from the moment the plane hit. I mean, floors were collapsing, cable wires were everywhere, and you could hear the people screaming, trapped in the swooshes from the fire from the elevators and the elevators falling. It was chaos. I mean, everybody just sort of robotically followed the person in front of them to leave the building.
How did you get out? Did you go down the stairs, obviously?
There was a stairwell.
But weren't there like tons of people just clamoring to go down the stairs?
Some of the stairs didn't even provide access. We couldn't even get to some of the stairs. And in the stairs that we started down, we had to leave those stairs, go back onto another floor, and then around to another completely different set of stairs because the stairs were gone further down.
Did you think at some point in that you weren't going to get out of there?
Absolutely. Somewhere around I don't know, I guess it was around the 9th or 10th floor. I'm really not sure. But by the time the second plane hit, and we may not have been down that far, but by the time the second plane hit, the building rocked again or shook again, and the doors that we were exiting from slammed shut, and we couldn't get out. So everybody just kind of stood there and looked at each other, and it was, I thought at that moment, this is it. I'm not going to get out of here.
An incredible tragedy.